Hello and welcome to the Vinyl Sanctuary. My name is Christian and I hope that you will join me in taking refuge in records. So I'm here today doing an album review request for a very dear friend of mine by the name of Andrea Moulding. And just to give you some background on Andrea, she's a published author and she's also the co-founder of a podcast by the name of Get It Off Your Chest, The Funny Side of Breast Cancer. And that is a podcast that she co-founded with another very dear friend of mine called Estelle Ma. So Andrea is a person that I hold in the highest of esteem. She's a wonderful podcast host. She's warm, engaging, funny, just a brilliant person to be around, great company, and has got brilliant music taste as well, in my opinion. And Andrea has given me a lot of words of encouragement and support in the run up to me actually creating this channel. So she was very gracious and generous with her time in terms of giving me some advice around getting set up and presentation, and just giving me the confidence to take the step for myself to start putting myself out here on YouTube and actually getting the Vinyl Sanctuary into a place where it was ready to become something that was reality, as opposed to just remaining this idea and dream in my head. So Andrea's been really pivotal in helping me to take those steps, and I will always be grateful to her for that. So if anybody at all watching this particular video would like to check out Andrea's work regarding her podcast, I would wholeheartedly encourage you to do so. Her handle here on YouTube is the name of the podcast, so there will be a link to her profile in this request video, not only so that she's tagged into it, but also because it can give people an opportunity to reach out to Andrea and get in touch if need be. And she's also obviously searchable online as well. So if you were to type in Get It Off Your Chest, The Funny Side of Breast Cancer, you can find out more about Andrea there and the work that she's doing alongside Estelle. And also you'll be able to find books that she's had published as well. So yeah, this one's for you, Andrea. I do hope that you enjoy what I've got to say about this album. I do believe that it is one that means a lot to you. So I will seek to do it justice, and I will of course just be completely fair and honest in my own opinions as well. So the record that I'm looking at today is Punch the Clock by Elvis Costello and The Attractions. So as is customary now on my review requests, I will talk a little bit about the artwork. I'll just show the record off briefly, let you have a look at the labels, and then I'll be consulting my notes to give you a track by track commentary of what I felt about this particular album. So there's the front and there's the back. So a nice black and white shot there. So just a bit of background. So it was released in 1983. It was the 8th album, studio album by Elvis Costello, and it was his 7th with The Attractions. And The Attractions here, I'll just turn it around so you can see there. There's the band. I'll just put it in a little bit closer there so we can see. So we've got Steve Naive on keyboards, we've got Bruce Thomas on the bass guitar, and then we've got Pete Thomas on the drums. And the Thomases, Pete and Bruce, are not actually related, but they do share the same surname. So that's a little bit of information there. It was produced by the team of Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley, who've worked on some really classic records over the course of their career. We have a horn section on here by the name of the TKO Horns, and they comprised of Jim Patterson, Jeff Blythe, Paul Spear and Dave Plews. And then also very interestingly is we have a female backing duo on this album, and they were called Aphrodisiac, and they comprised of their founding members Claudia Fontaine and a certain Karen Wheeler. And Karen Wheeler went on to great commercial success in the latter part of the 1980s when she was the lead singer of the R&B group Soul to Soul. So Karen Wheeler certainly about 4 or 5 years on from this particular album, she was starting to very much forge her own path with Soul to Soul and Jazzy B and her members in that particular group. So that's a little bit of background on the personnel that we've got here. And in terms of the artwork, I'll show you the back again. So there we've got quite a moody shot, I would say, of Elvis Costello and The Attractions. And I feel that with that particular outfit there that Elvis is wearing, it sort of looks like he's going for a slightly beat poet sort of a look. I've always felt like maybe a little bit of a sort of an Allen Ginsberg type sort of aesthetic to it. Just my opinion, but with the hat and just the the long coat, I just feel that he's almost going for a bit of a slightly subdued sort of poetic look. I think it's quite in contrast to the sort of the suited look that we saw on some of his earlier records, such as My Aim Is True and this year's Model. So on the front, I think it's a little bit more apparent to me with that sort of beat poet look that I'm referencing. I think certainly there with the turned up collar. I think the hat is a big part of that look, and also the glasses as well. I mean, obviously, we do know that, as am I, Elvis is a spectacles wearer, but I think in terms of even just the frames that he's chosen to wear on this particular album, he could have gone for any particular style, and I think the fact there that he's gone for the ones that he has just sort of blends into the overall look that I feel he is trying to create. So I think in terms of the sort of the look of the album, in the font and the design of it, I do think it's obviously of its time. It is very early 80s looking, in my opinion, but I do think it's a pleasant cover. I do think it draws the the person in who's about to play the album. I think it's quite simplistic, but I also think that it's quite effective as well. And then I do particularly enjoy that shot there. Reminds me a little bit of that photograph that's on the rear of the Specials album actually as well, which obviously Elvis Costello's got a direct link there because he did indeed produce that album. So that's something that always comes to mind when I do see that shot as well. And in terms of the front cover here, again, this was taken, that photograph there, and I do believe the back as well, it was taken, but this one certainly here was taken by Nick Knight, and it was taken in Dublin. And I also do think it was taken in 1983, so it was the same year that the album came out. So I'll just show the record off, and then I will get into my actual notes that I've got written here. So here's my copy of the album. So it's a nice clean copy. Hope that you can see that okay there. So there's side A. Just take it back a little bit. Hopefully that you can see the labels there. Maybe hold it back a little bit. It might be that the light is just affecting it there slightly with that all white label almost there, apart from the F beat with the colour there. So that's my copy, and I really enjoy playing it through. It was nice to give this a spin again because it's been a while since I played it. Being completely honest, as I always am, it's not an Elvis Costello album that I regularly go back to. I do tend to go back to some of those earlier albums, but it was good to put it on after some time. And obviously there are some tracks on here that are very, very much ingrained in my brain, in my memory, and whenever I hear them, they give me a great deal of enjoyment. But it was nice to sit there and take the notes that I did and sort of really do a bit of a deep dive on it for the purpose of the review for Andrea. So I've given a little bit of background on where things were with the actual personnel and some of the players on the album and a little bit of information about the artwork. So we'll get into the tracks now, and we'll take it from there. So I will be looking at my notes, as is always the case, and attempting to keep camera contact as well. So hopefully Andrea will be proud of my efforts with that. So we've got 13 tracks to get through, and the album is just over 45 minutes. Okay, so we'll get into it. So the opening track is called Let Them All Talk, and this album, for me, with this particular song, it comes storming out of the gate with an up-tempo, horn-driven soul pop song. So very much in the soul pop realm in terms of genres. So, we could have been expecting at this stage in Elvis's career, new wave or a bit of post-punk. Was he going to throw a bit of country at us? He'd done quite a few things by this stage, but we're starting off here with a soul pop album, especially with this track. And I do think that the musicality of it reminds me a little bit of early Dexys Midnight Runners. If I was to use one word to describe Let Them All Talk, I would say busy. It is a busy, busy song. What I mean by that is you've got Steve Naive's pipe piano tinkling away furiously throughout, and the opening horn riff, which is being provided by the TKO horns. It repeats itself throughout in a very insistent way. So there is a lot going on in this particular song in terms of sounds, and it really does come right at you. So making quite a statement there with that opening song. Costello himself, he manages to cram a lot of words into the track, which is impressive in a sense. But I do feel that as a result of the busyness of the music and the way in which Costello is getting his words into the frame, there is little breathability to the song. It is a pretty breathless song. It's a real rush of an opener. And I feel that because of the sort of the tempo of it, the nature of it, I think it's a track that's either going to fully connect or it won't. Being honest about it, I'm kind of in the middle with this song. I don't dislike it. I absolutely don't dislike it, but I wouldn't say that I love it either. I do, however, love the line, listening to the sad songs that the radio plays, have we come this far to find a soul cliche, which is just brilliant wordplay. Obviously, it's referencing Fa, sad song by Otis Redding. So it's a very likeable opener, overflowing with energy. I think it's a good start to the album, but not one that I love. I could understand if people did hear it and were a little bit, I'm not sure, maybe it's one that could grow on others. But for me, a likeable song, but not one that I love. So then we get into track number 2, which is Every Day I Write the Book. And as is now customary on the Vinyl Sanctuary, so I'll get it out of the way now. It tends to be the case at the moment that a lot of albums and things that I'm talking about have got some kind of a film reference to them, or they've appeared on a soundtrack or whatever. So in this case, Every Day I Write the Book, it did appear on the official soundtrack to the 1998 film The Wedding Singer, starring Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. I personally have a lot of time for that film. I think it's a very sweet film. It's a great romantic comedy. It's certainly my favourite film by Adam Sandler. I certainly wouldn't profess to be a particularly big fan of his work, but I do thoroughly enjoy The Wedding Singer. It's a film that I think has got a lot of heart to it, and I think the chemistry between Barrymore and Sandler is excellent. I am aware that I'm not a movie channel here, critiquing films, but I am a huge film lover. So every now and again, if there is a song or an album that I'm talking about that has a film reference, then I will put it in. And yeah, Every Day I Write the Book does appear on The Wedding Singer. So there's my tick now for my review today, that I've got my film reference in. Okay, so let's get into the actual song. I'll keep it to what I'm supposed to be talking about here. So this is a much slower tune compared to Let Them All Talk. It's very soulful, so it's continuing this sort of R&B soul pop vibe that the album is already starting to give to the listener. It's definitely one of my favourite songs on the album, and it was an excellent choice of single as well. I mean, it does scream single to me when I hear it. It's just got that commercial impact to it. I think just in its musicality, I think for 1983, it was just the right song at the right time, and I would argue that it was probably a very important song for Elvis Costello in terms of his commercial fortunes and what it's gone on to become. It is a very enduring song in his catalogue, and it does have a lot of fans, myself included. So the lyrics are superb, as you would expect from Elvis Costello, and there are a lot of great words on this album. And as a professional writer myself, I love the framework that Elvis Costello is presenting the listener with. So he uses a literary theme in Every Day I Write the Book, obvious clue in the title of the song, and the lyrics are documenting the breakup of a relationship, but our protagonist resolves to win her back by putting pen to paper in what will be the sequel to this saga. So the lyrics are very inspired in terms of this device that Costello uses in how chapters are referenced to describe the relationship breaking down. So he's cramming a lot of context into the parameters of a pop song here. So the chapters document the relationship breaking down, and then this mooted sequel that I've just mentioned, together with film rights. So he's already got all that signed up in the song as well. The film rights hints that this story will have a happy ending. So it almost feels like the plot of a romantic drama, romantic comedy being put to song. and it works really effectively. In my opinion, it really, really does. It's just such a good song. I especially love the backing vocals by Aphrodisiac and the overall smooth instrumentation as well. I much prefer the vibe of this song to the breakneck pace of Let Them All Talk. I do think that just slowing things down a little bit for me personally, and I'm not averse to fast songs. There's plenty of songs and genres of music I love that are fast and fast and furious, but I just feel that this for me was a good decision just to bring that pace down a little bit from Let Them All Talk, just to kind of ease the listener into things a little bit. So it's one, as I've said, it is one of his most enduring songs, and I think it's a great example of a concept that he has employed just being executed really, really successfully with this whole device of the the literary concepts to it and the themes. I mean, he is an extraordinary lyricist. We know that, but I do think on every day I write the book, he really does just hit it out of the park. It's a brilliant piece of music, great lyrics, and I just think everybody pulls that off superbly. Really well produced. It sounds great. The band sound great on it. So yeah, big thumbs up for that one. So then we get into track number 3, which is The Greatest Thing. And these are my notes here. So this is the song where the album, I've said here, yeah, the album title is lifted from. So this is where the reference Punch the Clock, it comes upon this particular track. On the verses especially, the song reminds me of Sandinista era clash. That's what I hear in the verses. That was something that I did know on this particular spin. It's not something, I'll be honest, that's occurred to me when I've listened to the album in the past. But I did feel that there was a bit of a Sandinista sort of a vibe to it, with what the Clash were doing at that time in their own world. I've just said here, yeah, that the Sandinista thing, there's something about the arrangement of the track and the bass line in particular as well. Just brought that album to mind. I love the TKO horns on this song, which is, very upbeat in tone. And in the lyrics, Costello uses the phrase punching the clock to describe his feelings towards the marriage that he's in. It's either himself or the protagonist that he's created for the purpose of the song. And he's equating it to starting a work shift. So that was my take from it, in that he's almost using this expression, we punch the clock to clock him from work on and off. He's using it in relation to a marriage. I feel that this use of phrase indicates a feeling of going through the motions. So maybe this is a marriage that has perhaps become a little bit stale, a little bit loveless. I feel that maybe the protagonist is on autopilot, or merely Costello's reference to punching the clock is just the fact that it takes work to make a marriage work. So, if a marriage is going to do what it needs to do, then it is a case of, both parties pulling together and compromising and, being invested in the relationship. So I did feel it was a really interesting use of phrase punch the clock in terms of using it towards a marriage. And then there is a line in here that I have made a note of, just out of interest. Punch the clock, and in time you'll get pulled apart if you're married on paper and not in your heart. So that to me kind of is a good summation of what I'm describing there in terms of what I get from the song itself. So there is some real kind of cynicism and bitterness in there as well, almost like a bit of a cautionary tale, a little bit of a warning there. Towards the end of the song, however, the marriage looks to have ended, but it's going to be okay because, again, our protagonist has found a girl who takes his breath away. So he alludes to that later on in the song, that this punching the clock, the marriage isn't working. It breaks down, but then someone else has come onto the scene that almost sounds again like similar to Every Day I Write the Book. There may be some happiness, some things are going to be resolved and life moves on. So I've said that it's an enjoyable song. It has got some impressively speedy singing in there by Costello, which I do enjoy a bit more than I did on Let Them All Talk. So yeah, I think it's a nice continuation from Every Day I Write the Book. So far, 3 songs, I'd say 2 I like quite a bit, and then 1 I really do thoroughly enjoy in Every Day I Write the Book. So then we get to track number 4, which is The Elements Within Her. And I've said here that there's a real 60s vibe to this song, which I really, really enjoy. I like the la 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 backing vocals by Costello himself, so he's clearly double tracked his voice and he's given himself accompaniment there on this song. There's some nice piano playing by Naive on here, and I love the line, "But back in the bedroom with her electric heater, I say, are you cold?" She says, "No, but you are, la." And that always makes me laugh. So the reason that makes me laugh is because it could be seen as being a double entendre, but I also think that the la is a really clever use of word, as it's not only a nod to Costello's Liverpudlian roots, obviously with la being a colloquial word for lad, but it also blends in with the lars which are being used on the actual backing vocals. So it just works really well. Always makes me smile, that line. Just the sort of the throwaway nature of the word la. So, and obviously where I'm located, being between Manchester and Liverpool, I hear the word la being used a fair bit. So that it does make me smile. And again, it's another enjoyable song, and it passes by quite quickly, doesn't overstay its welcome. So a nice continuation to the album. Then we get to track number 5, which is Love Went Mad. This is quite similar in feel to Let Them All Talk, in that it's quite busy sounding. Again, I do think there's a lot going on in there, but I do actually prefer this song to Let Them All Talk. I do like Steve Naive's playing on here, which in places brings to mind Oliver's Army. It's an okay song overall, but being very honest, it doesn't grab me in a way that some of the other songs on the album do. So 5 songs in, the album's ticking along pretty nicely. But then we get to track number 6, which is Shipbuilding. And now this is a song that very, very much does grab me and doesn't let go. So, up until this stage, there's been some songs that have been enjoyable, but this is a song that does stop me in its tracks every time I hear it. So I've got a fair bit to say here on Shipbuilding. It's most definitely my favourite song on the album, and I do feel that it is one of Elvis Costello's best ever songs, and that's saying something given how many songs the man has written. He is prolific. I mean, if that term could ever be used to describe anybody, it would certainly be Elvis Costello. This song was co-written with Clive Langer, who is one of the co-producers on this album, for the singer Robert Wyatt, who was a founding member of the band Soft Machine. So that was interesting in itself, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later, in that Elvis Costello actually wrote this for another artist, but then has gone on to record it himself for this album. So the song is a critique of the Falklands War, as well as making anti-violence, anti-war, and anti-Thatcher statements through its lyrics. The song describes the building of warships, which, although aiding the war effort and bringing revenue to the town that this shipyard is located in within the song, it's resulting in the deaths of the men who are building them. So the line that always gets me in a song where every line's aim is true is the following. So, with all the will in the world, diving for dear life when we could be diving for pearls. Every time I hear that line, it just, there's a real swell of emotion there with that. Just the sheer, the imagery of that, just the idea that that these young men could have been just anywhere else doing something, diving for pearls, doing something that just feels like, when I actually visualize it, the freedom of that, I actually have the visions of the, people, diving into the waters and just losing themselves and just being at one with the world and being carefree. But instead, the harsh reality of this situation is that they were diving for their lives, because the nature of building these ships was so dangerous, and just any one false move, or just a lapse in concentration, or having to have your senses around you permanently working overtime because other people were around you that may or may not have it could have resulted in an accident and then a fatality at any moment. So just the whole sort of imagery that he conjures up with that, this whole idea of these people building ships, because again in the lyrics he says that that's all they're skilled, that's all we're skilled in to do. I just find it such an affecting song, I really do, and that line in particular. So I do hope with that explanation there, I've tried to convey as best as I can just why that lyric in particular is so stark, and why it does mean so much to me when I'm thinking about what images there Costello wants us to be conjuring up. It's a very somber, lyrically affecting tune. There is a triumph in the messages that it conveys. I've just kind of alluded to that already. I do think it's really successful in that regard. It contains a beautiful trumpet solo by the legendary Chet Baker, and it has a very slow, jazzy feel to it. So this is kind of breaking away now from the sort of the R&B, soul poppy stuff that we've had on the album up until this stage. This is, really kind of stripping it back, very jazzy, a very appropriate accompaniment to this sort of a song, because it wouldn't work with the lyrical juxtaposition of what I've just been talking about with what would be a very buoyant, bouncy song. It just wouldn't work. It just would not work at all. It wouldn't be appropriate, to be honest, to do that, in my opinion. And as I mentioned just a little earlier there, I am interested in that although Elvis Costello co-wrote the song, he is in essence covering his own work. So the version that Robert Wyatt committed, it's his song as far as I'm concerned. Robert Wyatt's version is the definitive one. I still do prefer Robert Wyatt's version to this version, but this is in no way, I don't think it's a misstep. I think it was a very important song for Elvis Costello to be covering himself to do it. I think it's very effective, it's very worthy, and I do think that him including this song on here elevates the overall quality and mood of the album. So it must have been quite an odd well, I'm surmising, but I think it must have been quite an odd situation for Elvis Costello, where he co-writes this song for another artist who records it, and I think it was only like a year before that Robert Wyatt had done it. Goes on to be lauded quite rightly as one of the best recordings probably in UK music history. And then Elvis Costello himself decides to take a crack at it and do something with it, although he's co-written it. So in my notes here, the only other comparison that kind of came to mind, and it is slightly different because Robert Wyatt didn't write this song with Elvis Costello, but what does come to mind is that David Bowie, co-wrote China Girl with Iggy Pop. And obviously David Bowie went on to cover, well, I say cover because he wrote it, he went on to do a version of China Girl on the Let's Dance album, which also came out in 1983. But China Girl originally came up on Iggy Pop's album, The Idiot, which was from 1977. So I do wonder sometimes, and the reason I bring it up is because I feel that Bowie perhaps thought that China Girl was Iggy Pop's song. He did it before him, and I personally prefer Iggy's version. That's just, again, my opinion. But I do, again, feel that Bowie doing his version of it elevated the Let's Dance album. So that definitely did come into my thinking when I was thinking about shipbuilding and the whole relationship that Elvis Costello may or may not have with his own song. So I'm just going to go back to my notes here a minute. And it's an interesting one, because what I've said here is that I think it always comes down to one's own personal opinion as to which version of a song you do or you don't prefer. But I have said it's a fascinating situation for us as a listener to be in, because we get to decide, and we can compare how, for instance, Robert Wyatt did it, how Elvis did it, how Bowie did it, how Iggy Pop did it. And yeah, it's just something that really grabbed me and came into my thinking while shipbuilding when it concluded. It just was like, such an interesting thing that. So that song on the album here, Punch the Clock, it brings side one to a close. So it's a very, very, very poignant song to close side one, and it really, really does dial everything back from the songs that precede it. So this then brings us ready for side two of Punch the Clock, which so we're on to track number 7, and it's called TKO Boxing Day. So I've said here that similar to Let Them All Talk, in that it is a very upbeat R&B number with the horns front and centre, and you would expect that because I do think that the TKO in the title, although it's a pun being used in various modes, I do think it's primarily referencing TKO horns. So we've had this kind of really somber closing to side one, and then we're getting a really big surge in energy again for side two with a TKO Boxing Day. So yeah, I am assuming that the TKO in the song is the horn section playing on the album, and then TKO can also stand for a technical knockout. So there's a boxing reference in there as well. He's got Boxing Day in the title there. So this is a title that's working on a few different levels, which is unsurprising given that is something that Elvis Costello is very, very skilled at doing, is having a phrase with multiple meanings, interpretations, different frames of reference. Very, very, very smart in that way, and he was never ever shy of doing that. I've said that it's an okay song. Again, it's not one of my favourites, but I don't, and I've also said that I don't think it's one of Elvis Costello's better vocal performances on the album either. There's something about how he delivers the lines which I'm not quite sure how to put my finger on it, but the voice on it, because I do love Elvis Costello's voice, doesn't quite connect with me on this particular track as it does on others. But it's certainly not a bad song. Again, it's keeping up a consistent vibe of a good, decent, solid album. Okay, so then we get to track number 8, which is Charm School. And just as TKO is similar in feel to Let Them All Talk, track 2, side 2, which is Charm School, is similar to track 2, side 1, Every Day I Write the Book. So there is definitely a bit of a synergy there in that the two opening tracks on side 1, two opening tracks on side 2 are quite similar to the other. Although I've said here that Charm School sounds just a little bit more mournful than Every Day I Write the Book, so there is a slight deviation difference in the overall mood. It's got some notable keyboard playing on here by Steve Naive, and I enjoy the rhythm section here provided by the Thomases. It's a nice mood piece on the album. So the great thing about the Attractions is that they were always a superb band, just a brilliant backing group for Elvis Costello, and yeah, their importance on his recordings can never be underestimated. They a truly brilliant group. So then we get to track number 9, which is The Invisible Man, and I've said here that of the upbeat, horn-driven songs on this album, this one is my favourite. I like the energy of it, as it has a nice balance that a couple of those bouncier, busier tracks lack. And as a huge film fan myself, as I've already alluded to, I appreciate that the song title is referencing a cinematic classic, and it has lyrics describing someone watching films to escape the reality of their everyday life because they feel like the invisible man. So no one sees him or her, but or them. No one sees them for who they are. So that for me is just quite that's quite yeah. There's quite a bit of emotion, I think, to that. I think there's certainly a lot of people that can and do feel that way. I think that sometimes they maybe go a little bit unnoticed or a bit unseen or maybe a little bit misunderstood. And sometimes those people have to find solace or find a bit of escape in some pursuit or another, whether it's watching films or listening to music or whatever it is that they need to do. So I do feel in that regard the themes of The Invisible Man is just something that I do personally appreciate and gravitate to a little bit. So that is a song that I would say on the album for me is a favourite. We then get to track number 10, which is Mouth Almighty. That's quite a title. And the album breaks its pattern, I've noted here, a little bit by giving us a couple of up-tempo songs in quick succession. So up until this point, it's been a bouncy number, then slowing it down, then bouncy again, slowing it down. Here we've got a couple back-to-back that I would say are quite upbeat. The Attractions, as always, they sound really tight and they really, really bring this song to life. The title of the song is pretty self-explanatory in that the character of the song, maybe it is Elvis Costello himself, can't keep his mouth shut, and it appears that he has upset or offended his lover. So yeah, mouth almighty. So yeah, the lyrics on this one are pretty straightforward. I don't think there are too many sort of hidden messages in this one. It's pretty upfront in that, yeah, I'm saying stuff and it's upsetting the person that I love, and that, they need to stop doing that. But there's a really lovely but quite a brief surf style guitar solo in there towards the end of the song, which is actually my favourite part of the track. So I did want to just get in a bit of a reference to Elvis Costello, because I've always loved his guitar playing, always loved his voice as well. But this particular little bit, because I am really into my surf guitar and twangy guitars, and any sort of riffs and melodies that have got lots of reverb on them and jangle and chorus and stuff. I'm all over all that stuff. So that's a really enjoyable component of this particular track. Then we get to track number 11. Gosh, we're up to 11 now. Track number 11, which is King of Thieves. I like the arrangement on this song, as well as Costello's voice. So I do think Elvis here does sound particularly strong. There's a slightly orchestral feel to it in spots, and it has a bit of a sweep. I do. It's a short, fairly short song, but there is a bit of a sweep to it, quite grand in its own little way. I find the song to be pleasant, more pleasant sounding than one that I can truly or fully engage with. So I'm just trying to add a little bit of balance there with that. I think I like the sound of it more than I actually like the song. And if that sounds a little bit odd, what I mean by that is because Elvis Costello is a musician for me whose words have always just astounded me and impressed me so much, that sometimes it's a little bit strange where, if I'm not fully or connecting with the words as much and only just the musical side of an Elvis Costello song, then somehow I feel a little bit shortchanged. And that might be a really ridiculous thing to say. It might sound a little bit spoiled. It might sound a little bit, that I'm expecting or demanding too much. But sometimes I can't help that. Sometimes because he sets the bar so high, I do find sometimes that if I'm not really vibing with the words as much and it's just the music, then maybe that song feels more just an okay to good song for me rather than a brilliant one. So that might be something that I need to maybe go away and think about, because I do feel that King of Thieves falls into that bracket. I like the music of it plenty, I really do, I like it a lot, but it just feels more kind of pleasant sounding, and it's just kind of there and then it's over, rather than one that I find myself maybe poring over or analysing, or really getting into the heart of it. So, maybe that's something there that I need to reflect on a little bit, but I'm just being honest with you all regarding how I feel about the song and how I react to the work of this particular artist. So in that regard, I've said that the song feels a little more like a standard album track, rather than a standard track, so more standard than stand out, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. So it is kind of there and then it's not. But again, pleasant sounding enough. Then we get to the penultimate track on the album, which is Pills and Soap. Now, this is one of my favourite songs on the album. There's a real sense of dread to this song, and that is created from the very start through Steve Naive's slightly spooky piano stabs. So there's a real kind of a doomy, ominous sound to this song right from the get-go. Pretty, quite stark contrast to the vast majority of the album. I mean, even including Shipbuilding, which does have a darkness to it, but Pills and Soap, I'd say, is in another category again. Costello's voice here sounds a lot more restrained compared to the other songs. He's singing in a lower, slightly more purposeful tone. Even in some cases, he's almost sort of speaking the lyrics rather than singing them. I also think that lyrically, it's one of Elvis Costello's most powerful statements on Punch the Clock, on this album in particular, and probably throughout his wider catalogue as well. It could be argued. The lyrics explores the abuse of animals in the name of scientific research to make products such as pills and soap. And there is also an examination of class and conservatism with lyrics such as, "The king is in the counting house, some folk have all the luck, and all we get are pictures of Lord and Lady Muck. They come from lovely people with a hardline hypocrisy. There are ashtrays of emotion for the fag ends of the aristocracy." So really striking lyrics there, as you'd expect. The song also references as well how the media is used to manipulate the masses by redirecting their attention away from national problems and crises. And a line that I think summarises that observation of mine very succinctly is, "Give us your daily bread in individual slices and something in the daily rag to cancel any crisis." So I do think this is an excellent song. I enjoy it a lot. I like the vibe of it. I like the feel of it. And again, it's a song alongside Shipbuilding and Every Day I Write the Book that I do feel elevates the overall quality of the album. So yeah, Pills and Soap is definitely a song that I do pore over, and I do really kind of look into the themes of it. And again, there's the whole Thatcher backdrop to that song as well. This was written in '83, where Thatcher had been in government she came in '79. She's been in for like 4 years by the stage, and maybe those lyrics as well are pointing towards what the rest of her time in office was going to result in, and what it was going to look like. So, and obviously, Thatcher continued to be in office through the rest of the 1980s. So the final track on the album here, track number 13, is called "The World and His Wife." So after the very dark and sinister tone of Pills and Soap, "The World and His Wife" is a return to this bouncy, rather poppy R&B vibe again. That song, the rhythm and the feel of it. And to be honest, I find it a little bit jarring, that really sudden shift between Pills and Soap and then "The World and His Wife." So from a listening experience, it is a little bit jarring because in my experience, in my view, I'm still processing, the mood, the themes of Pills and Soap, the instrumentation of it, this vibe and mood that the band create on that song. And then I'm kind of jolted out of that pretty quickly, this contemplative state, by the introduction of this final song on the album. So you kind of have Pills and Soap, and then it's like, we're straight into this other song. So that's interesting in itself. But what I have said here, because this was my experience when I went round with the album again, is that after that initial jarring, after that sort of, that little shock to the system, I did find myself really enjoying this song, "The World and His Wife." I enjoyed it with its energy, and it has got pleasant instrumentation. And this was an interesting thing, I thought, in that I feel that it certainly ensures that this album closes on a jauntier note than would have been the case had Pills and Soap been the closer. So I'm assuming that the positioning of this track on the album was a decision that was made consciously. It was made with due consideration. I do wonder whether or not that was something that was discussed in terms of, do we really want Pills and Soap here to be the closer, or do we want to maybe lift the listener a little bit just before we bow out with this particular album. So that's kind of my thoughts on the final track, "The World and His Wife," and that concludes my track by track commentary on Punch the Clock. So my overall summing up and conclusions: I think it is a good album. It's certainly a good album. It's a solid album. I enjoyed playing it, certainly because it had been a while since I had played it. I will be completely honest and say that it's not, for me, a classic Elvis Costello album. I do think there are albums he made that were, in my opinion only, that were stronger, that I do connect with a little bit more, but this is certainly a good album. There is at least I'd say three songs on there that are, for me, truly superb, really excellent songs. And there's a good many others that I do enjoy a good bit as well. There's maybe one or two that I'm a little bit indifferent to, but I think on a 13-track album, the quality is good. It's solid, and I'm pleased to have it in the collection. And I have certainly heard worse Costello albums than this. It's certainly not one of his weaker albums. I'd say it's probably more sort of not upper echelon, but sort of probably higher up within maybe the middle of it there, and certainly not down lower towards the end or anything like that, far from it. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. I had a good opportunity there to really get my head together and make some notes. which was good fun. I always love looking at what Elvis Costello's lyrics are like and reacquainting myself with them. So, Andrea, I do really hope that I've done this album justice for you, and that I've shared my thoughts and feelings with you in a way that perhaps we can have a conversation around. And I would love to know what people think in the comments as well. Is this an Elvis Costello album that you do particularly love or enjoy? Please do share your comments and let me know. And with that in mind, if you've enjoyed my video today and you've not subscribed to the Vinyl Sanctuary, then I would really appreciate it if you considered doing so. That would mean a great deal to me if you did. If you do choose to subscribe, then please do make sure that you click the notification bell, and that will keep you updated as to other albums, rankings that I'm doing, or review requests, or whatever it is that I'm looking at or working on. If you click that bell, then it'll ensure that you don't miss anything. And yeah, if you want to maybe give this video a thumbs up as well, if you enjoyed it, then that would mean a lot to me too. So nothing more to say other than thank you very much for your time and attention. I enjoyed listening to Punch the Clock. I enjoyed sharing my thoughts. And until next time, bye for now.